because loyalty from their perspective, from during the struggle, trumps anything else, trumped, by the way. And I think the first real test is now the budget, where the ANC will find, and they are finding at the moment, that you can't just write roughshod over other parties. You have to negotiate and accommodate other views.
You're watching WORLDVIEW, the #1 media company where we explore everyone's perspectives on all things that can broaden our worldview. We have a budget crisis with the ANC proposing tax hikes, where many people in the opposition parties are not interested in that. And in the midst of this, we have foreign policy issues, with South Africa taking positions that the Western alliance do not favor, positions that anger countries like Israel, for example. And here we have Dr. Corne Mulder, the newly elected leader of the Vryheidsfront Plus. Corne, to start things off with, I know you're in favor of the entire government of national unity idea, especially at its beginning. It seems like things went wrong since its inception. What went wrong?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I think maybe it's a little bit too early to make a final judgment of what's going on, but at the moment things are not the way they should be. First of all, the idea of a government of national unity, I think, is a positive and a good idea, because we've had a one-party government for 30 years, which is terrible. And luckily, after the last election, we are now in the position that we have to form some kind of coalition or some kind of government of national unity. That's positive. But the whole idea of a government of national unity is that no single party can have their own way. You have to accommodate each other, you have to make compromises, and to find a new path that everybody takes forward. It's a new experience for all of us. I think the problem basically started off with the fact that our constitution doesn't make provision for that. If you look internationally, what happens? People negotiate for weeks or months before they come to an agreement. We had 14 days to put together a government of national unity, and that's not ideal. It's very unrealistic, actually, which means that people have decided to elect certain people, but the substance in terms of program has not been agreed to or finalized to a very large extent. At the moment, the ANC is in a position where they are still the largest party, but they don't have a majority by themselves. So the things that are causing problems, first of all, are certain legislation that were passed by Parliament at the end of the last term when the ANC was governing alone. Those things were passed by the previous Parliament. Those are not legislation coming from the Government of National Unity. However, the President signed them and put them into law, which is a problem. And I think the first real test is now the budget, where the ANC will find, and they are finding at the moment, that you can't just write roughshod over other parties. You have to negotiate and accommodate other views. We've got until the 12th of March to agree amongst ourselves in terms of the budget, and hopefully we can do that.
Hopefully?
I think so. I think so. It's important. I don't want to kick the whole notion of a government of national unity out of the door at this stage. I don't think so. Because at the moment, I think it's the right way to go if all the parties are mature and if the ANC can find a vision where they are prepared to listen to others, which means they will have to compromise and make changes in their own positions. I'm not convinced that the ANC thinks in those terms, but let's give them a try and let's see if they can do that.
And as new leader, you're promising a new brand to your party. If I was your prospective voter,
yes,
what would you ask me? Here in the Western Cape, here we are in a rich area of Cape Town. What would you ask me?
No, in the end, speaking about Cape Town, speaking about the Western Cape, it's no use. The people who were in the presidential suite on the Titanic also went down when the ship sank. So the fact that we are in Cape Town or in the Western Cape is not going to save us if the country goes down. And because of that, that's the reality of South Africa. It's very important that we find a way forward. I believe we can do that. FILMMAKER Plus has got its own brand, and in the end of the day, you cannot form a party or expect people to support you because your main objective is to be against something. You can't get people to vote for you because I'm against the ANC or I'm against EFF or MK. That's not good enough. On the other hand, you also cannot expect people to vote for you because I don't want to offend another party and I'm in their slipstream. I'm trying to be as close as possible to where they are because I don't want to offend them, and then they can act against me in terms of the media. That's also not the way. The way is find your own path, find your own voice, make it loud and clear what you stand for, and ask people to support that. That's what I'm going to do with the party. We'll put out a vision. I've got the idea where we need to go. And in that, accommodating the total reality of South Africa and make that very clear, and then the electorate will have a choice. You can either be against somebody, you can try to be in the slipstream of something else, or you can make it valid choice to say, I think this can work and I will support it.
Mm. And can you find that binne baan, as it were, in the government of national unity, or shouldn't you be leaving it?
Well, the fact was, I was a very strong proponent from the beginning that we should be part of the government of national unity, because if possible, if you can be around the table where the decisions are taken that affect the country and that will affect your constituency, you've got to be at that table and to make your input and be a part of those decisions. However, if it becomes clear that you're not making any impression whatsoever, or that the larger party is not listening to anybody else, they're not prepared to make any compromises, then it becomes a difficult situation. And we've said right from the beginning, I've become the leader now very recently. I'm not going to take a decision in terms of the knee-jerk kind of decision, jump up and storm out of the room. That's not the mature way to do that. What the party will do is we will evaluate consistently throughout what is our stance, what is our position. And when we come to the conclusion, it will be a party decision, and it will be a calculated decision to do what is in the best interest. And we will go through that process.
Mm. When you say a party decision, how many people are there?
The structures of, we're a democratic party, it will be the structures of the party. I will obviously give some leadership and give my own ideas, but in the end, I would like to take the Federal Council of the party to keep with me, and that's about 140 people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Rob Airsoft, we just spoke to, said that he definitely sees a role for you in the Vryheidsfront Plus in an alliance with Gates and McKenzie. What do you see? What do you think of that?
Well, South Africa is a very complicated country and a very diverse country. Our national motto says unity and diversity, because that's the reality of this country. The Constitution makes provision for 11 languages. So a very diverse society of different communities, different cultures. Mr. McKenzie represents a community to a certain extent that more predominantly supports his party. We represent perhaps another community. Freedom Front Plus's point of view is quite clear. We say South Africa is not a country consisting only of 60 million individuals. We are people that belong to different communities, different minorities. There are all kinds of permutations in that regard, and people do that on a voluntary basis. Our party says that we want to look out specifically for the Afrikaner community as a point of departure, as one of the minorities. There are other minorities as well. And we would like to become the home for minorities throughout South Africa. And in that instance, I've got a very good relationship with Mr. McKenzie. And of course, we can cooperate and work together. And we've done so in the past. There's no problem.
What's going through my mind is this. We hear from everybody that South Africa has everything it needs. It's got resources, it's got talent, it's got everything. So the only thing that seems to be missing is each person doing the job that they are naturally suited for.
Yes.
And again, the 30 years that have just gone by clearly show that this isn't the case.
Yes.
Is that idea even mentioned at the government level, at least at the coalition level?
Not at the moment. If you have a recipe to bake a cake, and you use this recipe, and the cake is not a success, it's a huge failure, it falls flat. Why would you use the same recipe next time? And again, and again, and again. And that's what is wrong at the moment. We've been using the ANC's recipe in terms of their perception and their view of the economy and how we should grow the economy and how we should create jobs. It's a failure. We've got more than 30% unemployment. We don't grow the economy, so it's a problem. If we are serious in terms of taking the whole situation forward, everybody wants us to do that. We need to have a common vision and a common purpose. Now, the irony is, and that's also because of the dynamics of the system, when the President opened Parliament at the beginning of the year, in the beginning of February, he spoke at the State of the Nation address. And then he said, this is our ideas, this is all the announcements, and soon we will have a national dialogue in order to kind and find a common vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit the wrong way. We should first talk to one another and get that common vision, which is, in my terms, would mean let's agree on a recipe that can be successful. And then if we implement that, we should have a beautiful, successful cake and not what's falling flat every time. So that has not happened really. And the ANC will have to decide. Are they prepared to talk about that? Are they prepared to look at the current recipe or not? And if they continue with the current recipe, they shouldn't expect a different outcome.
You see, the impression that I have listening to the media interviews yourself, others have given all that, what I'm hearing is this, on a very basic level. There seem to be two camps. The one is the ideology camp.
Yes.
According to this ideology and this principle, this should be happening and blah, 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 blah. But on the ground, There's a crime problem, there's an education problem, there's a health problem, there's an economy. There are realities on the ground that nobody's talking about. Instead, they're saying, well, ideationally, this and that and the other. To our mind, there's a mismatch. And the question is, how does one break that to be seem like a deadlock? Is there any way to either interrogate or, I don't know if such a word can be used, forced, to say, well, hang on, let's talk about the practicalities first.
Sure.
Instead of trying to make a cake of ideas.
Sure. No, I think that is on the table. I think people are prepared to do that. And the irony is, at the moment, you do find a positive difference with regard to certain ministries. For example, if you have a minister that thinks different, like we've got correctional services, that is making a practical difference at the moment, regardless of what the cake or the recipe may be in terms of the practical thing. And I hope that the Democratic Alliance says the same in terms of the departments where they've got ministries at this stage. So that is happening, and I think from the ANC's perspective, they would like to see that also. If they can do that, that's a different question. Or do they have competent people who can do the things differently as well? I don't know. I hear positive things coming from the Minister of Security, Police Services. It seems that there are some positive things happening out there. So that on the one hand, we need to do that in terms of the practicality, and I think the pressure being applied from the United States at the moment could also force people's hand to say, well, we need to move quickly. But behind that is the bigger discussion in terms of people believe that if we can get a successful economy and people have jobs and their economic growth and prosperity, many of these issues will basically be sorted out along the way. But that's a more long-term approach. And I absolutely agree. On the short term, these things remain challenges. And the ordinary people experience that every day.
And so the question then is, who is championing this type of discussion? In other words, is it you doing it, someone else, or more people than one saying, hang on a minute, I don't want to talk to you about ideology.
Sure.
Go and do it somewhere else. Yeah, we're talking about
Practical
sense,
yes.
black and white,
Yes.
issues that matter. People,
Yes.
they're suffering. They don't want to hear ideas. They want to hear practical solutions. Who's championing that?
That's a difficult one to answer. I'm not privy as to what's happening in the executive and the cabinet at the moment. I don't know if those things are being discussed there. I'm not sure if the president is taking the initiative or not. We don't know. I am serving on the clearinghouse mechanism. We were supposed to have a meeting yesterday. It's been postponed until the 7th of March to deal with certain issues, including the budget. So those kind of things will be addressed. Technically, Parliament should also be a forum where these things are discussed and decisions are taken. But that's not really happening in Parliament at the moment. So there's a need for perhaps at that national dialogue, it should be break up into small working committees and things that deal with the practicality. But then there should also be the commitment for parties to sit around the table and to really try to find solutions and be prepared to make compromises.
So who's going to champion the
The clearinghouse mechanism.
What Elon Musk is doing?
Oh,
SA Doge.
no.
Yes, Doge. Who's the champion of SA?
It should be the president. It should be the president who's in charge and the overseer of the whole executive, and that's where all the ministers are. If he's focused on that, I'm not sure. I don't know.
But he's often said, we're going to combat corruption.
No, but that's
He appointed
yeah.
to do the job.
Yes, no, that's a problem. It remains a problem. Every year, and I've said that after the speech as well, every year we've got a long list of promises and undertakings and nothing happens in practice. I think that this budget situation where the budget couldn't be discussed last week or be delivered to Parliament is a wake-up call because the ANC, I think, thought it will be business as usual, the minister will introduce it and they can just have their own way. And that has now forced basically a rethink to a certain extent. If the ANC is prepared to do that, we'll see in the next couple of days until the 12th of March.
I think a typical example of this is this old mayor of Johannesburg. I can't remember his name, but he's now been absolved,
Yeah.
quote unquote, by the National Prosecuting Authority. He's not being charged anymore.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes. Well, I don't have the facts. I will have to. I haven't seen what's exactly in that file about that. It was allegedly about a funeral insurance scheme or something some years ago. What the details are, I don't know. Technically, the public prosecutions should prosecute if there's a prima facie case. The fact that they are not doing so at the moment, I must believe that they believe there's not a winnable case. I don't know. I don't have the facts, unfortunately.
and the foreign policy issues of the South African government now seeking a nuclear deal with Iran or Russia. That seems to just be another antagonizing movement.
Yes, it's a problem, and the problem is underlying that the parties in the government of national unity could have not agreed, they should not have agreed, and I don't know if they agreed, it was just announced by the ANC that international relations remain the exclusive domain of the ANC, regardless of a government of national unity. Now, you cannot go into a government if that is the position from one of the parties. And we see that in terms of the policy that is playing out. And with all due respect, I'm not so sure, I'm not convinced that Mr. Trump's actions, President Trump's actions against South Africa is so much about the Expropriation Act. I think it's about the foreign policy where South Africa is being seen as the champion that undermines the national interests of the United States. And I think that is the pivotal thing that played a role in the approach, and currently still. Because South Africa is being seen, why can't we take it from the handbook from India? They are part and parcel of BRICS. They've just signed a wonderful economic development agreement with the United States. They will get some beautiful equipment, military equipment, etc. Because you should put your country first. Don't be so ideologically thinking that you are so absurd into one group that you cannot look at your own interests. That's the problem. But that's the ANC.
Why is that happening? What do you think? Why is the ANC so stubborn?
Because
what are these Americans telling us what we can and cannot?
No, because loyalty from their perspective, from during the struggle, trumps anything else. Trump, by the way. In other words, because Cuba were their ally, or because they associate with Hamas, or whoever, Iran, you name it, that trumps everything else. And that's just the ideological perspective, which is a blunt kind of international policy. It's not a very astute kind of thing to try and do, but that's the ANC.
So, what we've been talking so far, it's familiar. There's nothing radically new.
Yeah.
Yet, the young voters who haven't quite stood up, as it were, who's thinking about what they're looking for, and I'm going to ask a number of questions. But if we start on, okay, this is what we know so far. But looking forward, it's a whole new generation.
Yes.
And a lot of them don't have all the racial conflicts that our generation
Yes.
have had. What about them now? What is the future look like for them?
Yes. My view is, first of all, no one should be as interested in your own affairs than you should be yourself. And that goes for the youth as well. It's quite often that the youth says, no, I'm not interested in politics. I don't want to be part of that. I'm not involved. That's a mistake. It's a huge mistake. You cannot get somebody else to look out for what is important to you or what should be important. The youth should get involved. And if you look at the demographics, for example, the youth, 18 to 35, is a huge part of the demographics of South Africa. It's a huge, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and we know that. And as you correctly point out, what is important to them may be completely different from our perspective. The world has changed, the working environment has changed, the opportunities have changed, and they must find a way within that reality. And I think in the end, what we all want is not so different. It's people want to have an opportunity to have a job. They want to go forward economically speaking. They want security. They want to have a future for themselves and their children. And as you correctly pointed out in the beginning, this country is everything is there. We've got the beautiful culture, the climate, natural resources, everything is here. I think what is needed is that the youth should also step up and get involved. And if you look at the percentages when it comes to elections, they are not there.
So, on a very practical level, in fact, we had a question from a young person who said, you know what, I'm a whistleblower. I'm part of a system where I can see those problems. I've got nowhere to go. I can't go to the police. I can't go to the government. Where do I go? But the question here is this. Is it possible to have a container, or use the previous term, repository, whatever you want to call it, where people with issues can go and be heard? In other words, if young people take the initiative, is there a home for them so they can be protected and received and heard?
At the moment, I don't think there's such a container or something like that. But that's the kind of thing. If you've got a government of national unity, which is a good idea because it means no one can just do their own thing.
Yes.
If they are serious, they must be in a position where they want to accommodate all the different sectors of society. And the youth is going to be, and is already, a huge fundamental sector, one of the most important components, and going forward. If a government of national unity or any government wants to be stable and wants to have the support of the majority which they need, they must make an attempt to specifically reach out to that community and create the necessary mechanisms to make it possible.
But I'm asking specifically,
Yes.
is your party thinking, wait a minute, yes, an opportunity.
Absolutely.
We will advertise to the country.
Oh, yes.
Black, white, Chinese, whatever you want.
Yes.
Yeah, we will help you.
Absolutely. If,
Chinese is very important.
Yeah.
South Africa.
if you look, for example, at our election that we had in the weekend, I'm from the older generation, that's fine. But the other people elected mostly are younger people from our youth. And that is very much important because that is looking forward. And I realize I can play a role because I've been there in the past. I've got the link to where we come from and the whole process of the constitution, etc. But if we want to go forward, the youth is a specific target group that we have identified, and we will take the necessary steps to do exactly as you're suggesting, to create that kind of link. I want to win that community or that segment of society to get involved.
So then,
Oh, yes.
take this as sort of a commitment also to say, you know what, in our
Yes.
we will make it something that we will do. Not some theory.
Absolutely, because as the party is focusing on minorities as such, but it's not only about minorities, it's about certain segments of society. And the youth, they're not a minority, but they are a very vital segment.
See, they remain paralyzed because they've got nowhere to go.
Exactly. No, that's true.
So the other question is looking even further into the future, the advent of AI.
Yes.
What do you think of it?
It's fascinating. Last night, I asked AI to make a video about me.
Oh, good.
And I must say the contents, the script and the narrative is excellent.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
The view, the material is not usable. I don't feature in that at all. They didn't find any picture of me or any video or nothing. But it was excellent in terms of how that was done. Now, the reality is, AI is a reality. It's not going away. It's going to become more predominant. It's going to become more influential. It will affect people in terms of jobs. We've got no doubt. The challenge is going to be, how do we harness that capacity to the best in terms of what can assist going forward as well. And there are many opportunities for that.
Like specifically, like for example, like what could be I will say action list, an action item that, again, from your perspective, we will do this.
Well, obviously, as the party now starts to plan and program our own program going forward, that will feature very prominently as well. And then you have to look, for example, people, if I tell you about the frustrations of people when they interact with government,
Yes.
and they want to speak to somebody, some intelligent person, and they can't, and all they do is they get to some answering machine that just goes in the circles, press 1, press 2. AI has got the capacity to do that, even if it's not a human, but to be very, very effective in terms of assisting in that kind of giving better service, because it's got the availability, and we will have to explore all those kinds of
And
opportunities.
so is there somebody you know in this moment that you can say, you know what, so he can do the AI
Yes.
part of our...
Yes, we have some of that, and as to be expected, they are part of the youth structure.
Of course.
It's the youth because it's the new way of thinking, but it's early days because everybody is still exploring what is possible, what can be done, and we need to get this under our belt, but we are busy with that as well. Yes, sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, Corne, we've identified the problems. We've spoken about multitude of solutions. What would you leave our viewers with the phrase from this going forward? What should our viewers expect with your party's success?
No, I am very serious in terms of taking the party forward. And obviously, as an individual, I've got my own ideas, I've got my own vision, but I know how the world and life works. I cannot do that on my own. I'm the leader of a democratic party. I need to take the party with me. I need to take the structures with me. And we will go through internal processes to get us on that route. But once we've done that, you need to take the largest portion possible of the electorate also with them.
Yes.
There's nothing that can compare with hope, with enthusiasm, with good ideas to influence the electorate out there. What do I want to do? I want to create and build this party to be the absolute logical, natural, political vehicle for people who share the same ideas that we stand for. It must be just logical that when it comes to politics, you may belong to this trade union, you may belong to this NGO or this civil society organization, that's fine. But when it comes to election time and you've got to go and vote, it must be the most natural thing that this party, the Freedom Front Plus, is my logical political home. And the only way to do that is to go out and position the party as close as possible to the ideals as to what is in the hearts and the minds of the people I want to serve. That's what we need to go and do. And by doing so, there are different communities out there, different segments of society, who are different communities and different segments. But to a very large extent, they also have the same ideas. What I want for mine, they want for theirs, and we need to push those ideas forward. And as I've said, I can't be a party just by opposing the the ANC, or trying to be like the Democratic Alliance. I've got to find my own voice. I know where I want to go and position the party, but I cannot do it by myself. I cannot do it alone. I'm reaching out to our society and community out there. Take my hand, come and assist. Let's do this together. And I'm positive it will succeed.
How would this be done? Earlier you said we're specifically interested in the Afrikaans world. Supposing somebody from another group, or a different province,
No,
or a different whatever.
No problem.
How do you
Easy. The party must remain true to its roots, where we came from, and that's a very important society, even though it's a minority.
Yes.
If you look at the solidarity movement, more than 600,000 members out there that are part of that institution. That is to a very large extent part of the Afrikaner community. But just as important are other minorities as well. We've just now amended our constitution. We've entered into the constitution what we call a credo. And in that, we specifically reach out to other minority groups as well. And what we are saying is, for example, the Khoi, the San, the Griqua, others, they are also minorities. And we have also said other people speaking different languages that may come from different places, but those who have made Africa their home, yes, are also part of our constituency, and we would like to get them involved and bring them into the fold. What I hope to see is that the Freedom Front Plus becomes a coalition.
Right.
The party itself becomes a coalition of minority groups that have a lot of in common, and they cooperate and work together, and they are represented there. I want the party to be the natural home and vehicle for that kind of approach.
So do you think, for example, that Kimbacha may be more
I3,
McKenzie, and so on? So who would be the most likely?
Well, it will depend. Quite often you have a party that says, no, we've got our own identity, we don't want to become part of something else. That may be so. And we feel so strongly about this or that or the other. I don't want to see that our party is so exclusive,
Okay.
that you cannot really go beyond your base. You have to be inclusive. And you can be inclusive without letting go of what you really have as core values, because you can bring others together who share the same core values. Although we have different cultures, although we speak different languages, that's not
I think that the young people are looking for practical examples and evidence of finding a home.
Sure.
My perception. I'm just sharing.
Absolutely. No, I believe it can be done. So my message is quite clear. It's early days. Next year we have a local government election, but the big one comes in 2029. We are working towards that. And if I look at some opinion polls, it seems that the ANC's trajectory still remains going down, which means you'll need to have a strong middle ground that will start to form in the middle. And then just the last point, this mystical myth of the doomsday, which is being used to scare people, that because of this bad thing, you have to support and work with the ANC or the Democratic Alliance. I want to break that myth. And the way to break the myth is to create the middle ground of a stronger alternative, which is much bigger than what is perceived to be the doomsday scenario.